So, good afternoon. We continue from the morning session and go to the topic about which we have been invited to talk here, about engaging citizens. And we have added there also users, because citizens are not always the users and users are not always the citizens. So to make a bit also this conceptual distinctions between these. So we both, Pilvi and me, we work both in Aalto University in the Department of Built Environment. We are architect background researchers, and then also we are experts here in the Finest Center. So nice to be here, and now during this half an hour, we try to open the challenges of participation and working with citizens. Suddenly came everything. Don't look at this, but look at that. We talk about, I think when we now listen to this morning sessions and Gylle's talk, so you are really in a very important moment in your projects. You are making the project plans. We call them research plans or piloting plans, but it is the moment where the project in a way gets its form. And that's why it's very important in a way to do it as a collaborative process. And what we have raised some questions here, and I think they are very in line with what Gylle also emphasized during the morning, that when at this moment it is important that you in a way go through all those potential partners of the projects, of your piloting project, and then discuss with them, have this kind of collaborative talk with those potential participants, and go through all those expectations, what each of you have of the project, what are their motivations, and also what kind of results do each of those participants expect of the project. And then there is an important, it's especially important when we talk about the citizen participation, it is to try to clarify, is it how much the piloting is linked to an ongoing real life process? Because that gives, if it is a real life process, for example, of a city planning process, which is, that's a field which is very familiar to both of us, working with city planning. So there are certain limitations and very important to understand the timing of those processes if you are really somehow as a partner of an ongoing real life project. So take care of that. And then we come to those roles of the participants. Now today they are mostly, the presentations come from researchers, and we are looking at the connections with cities, but then we also have the companies, and all these in a way have to understand, and it has to be also discussed the role of each other. So we as researchers, we are also very different. We have different methodological background, and as architects, we are quite practiced there in the borderline of academia and practice. That's important for us. We have been a lot in action research, where you really go to the process and you are one part of the process. But you can also keep yourself a bit outside and however, but be in a way careful of that what is your role as a researcher? And then cities, I think all those what Gylle told, and so how do cities collaborate with researchers? So there will be some examples. Pilvi will tell about this, our Greenfields process, which is one example of a very nice city collaboration. And then we have these end users, or if we want to call them citizens, it's important in a way to keep in mind that they are also, citizen is a political term. They are a part of the democratic systems, and then we are easily part of this public sector, what cities are. So in a way to understand, a citizen can be your end user of some service, but it is different to talk about customers or end users or citizens. So make also clear what do you mean when you engage, as said here, citizens. And then the role of companies, of course, it's very important, one of those key values here to find that's a business aspect of it. And then we come to those resources from each participant, what kind of personal input work you can give to the project, and all these investments and direct funding and data. This is all familiar to all project development. So this is in a way those issues which have to be discussed, I think, exactly in this moment where you are at the moment. And after that, then we come to those questions which are related to this citizenship or user. Why it is important to involve citizens or end users in what is expected from them? And do they have real impact? Are you ready to give some impact also to this user aspect? Because when you invite people to come to join as users to some certain process, they have to be motivated. They have to know whether it has some impact on the result. So because time is limited and life is busy, so it must also be clear with this point. Then I'll take one frame which has helped us because we really want to emphasize the communicative aspect of these kind of processes. We talk about this planning and urban development processes, but this model has its background in project design. It's called double diamond, where we, in a way, understand the communication and working in a way flows where you open the project, you get information everywhere, and in a way you collect it. But then there is also this closing, where you have to conclude somewhere. So in a way, and it is different frame for the communication to open up, as we call diverging, and closing down when we have to get forward and make choices and this kind of decisions and plans. And then again might come this opening phase when we go forward. So this is in a way just to try to understand there are different methods when we now talk about this smart city and digital methodology. So what we have studied is to try to understand how do these different digital methods support the different needs of this knowledge flow and communicative flow. And I just quickly added, you have the three phases in Kylle's presentation in the morning. You had the solution, then you had the piloting, and then you have the further development. And you can use this kind of frame that some moments you open up in a way to open a wider discussion, this solution, and then you have to make the conclusions. Then you go to piloting and you engage the citizens, and again you make the conclusions. So this kind of understanding of which method supports each need of different phases. Now we go to Pilvi, and Pilvi tells about this Green Twins project we have been doing together.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon on my side also. Nice to be here. So my part of this presentation is about the user research that we carried out in Green Twins project. And you see here the most difficult question when you are at this point, when you have already the solution idea, you still have to ask maybe, do they actually need it? That was the question in our project. Do the citizens actually need our solution? Luckily, we found out that yes, they do. And I hope that you already have this answer. But anyway, to keep in mind, what does the citizen actually need? But before I go to the Green Twins project, I would like to emphasize that there are different approaches, different participatory design approaches. These are all participatory design, but the role of the user is different in each. Well, I think actually in this case, when these cities have created or kind of brought up their challenges, it has somehow been like citizen-driven approach. So if something is created in the community and then kind of brought to the design process, it can be called citizen-driven approach or maybe city-driven approach in this case. But we often talk about co-design together with citizens, and but it rarely happens. So usually our user research activities are more like this user-centered activities where the user is somewhere there, and then the researcher or designer is observing or gathering information with questionnaires and so on. And it means actually that even though we talk about user-centered design, it is the top-down approach where the designer is up here and the citizens or users are somewhere out. So it's important to understand if you are aiming towards co-design, you select different activities, different methods than here in the user-centered approach. Actually, our Green Twins project used mostly human-centered activities, even though we aimed to co-design. I will tell you more about those activities soon. A couple of words about Green Twins tools. What we were creating. We were creating or developing two different IT tools, 3D tools, which used city model database and this kind of green area extension. The green area extension or plant library was a very important part of our project. So we created digital models of green environment and integrated it to the city information model to be able to visualize the existing environment, but also future plans in 3D. And we had a co-planning application here, and then this kind of virtual reality application. And in addition to those, we also created a city planning hub here in Tallinn. Our hub is existing currently, and you can maybe visit there if you want. It is the kind of the place for the whole co-creation for city planning. The idea of this kind of hub is that we can come together to discuss city planning issues. But anyway, the idea is also to enable collaboration about these tools. So co-create and test and use these developed tools in these hubs. And the other hub I have here is our own hub called Cave Space in Otaniemi, which was in a way brought the idea to also implement this kind of space in Italy. Very important part of the whole process. And why we wanted to do quite a extensive user research on Green Twins was that we understood that there is an implementation gap between the needs of the users and the development of these kind of planning tools. And we arranged a lot of different kind of activities during 2022 and 21. And actually it was an iterative action research process where we started with designing the user research, then conducting it, and then we gathered the data and analyzed it, and also evaluated the process, and it was an iterative process. But we can also visualize this process with this Aija triple diamond model. When I started to think that how can we actually see here how Green Twins went. So we started with the solution idea, and we had these user needs created by the city. Similarly, these city challenges were given for us also, and we selected one, and then we created this solution idea. Of course, there was existing research and ideas already before, but the idea was then kind of formulated, and then after getting the selection, we created the research agenda where we found out more new knowledge needs for the user reports also. And after that, so here we have the solution idea, and now starts the process, the kind of actual project. And we started this by discussing this concept idea, this solution idea, together with stakeholders in workshops. So it was the time of COVID, so we had online workshops, but also we gathered information with questionnaires. And then when we had this a lot of information from different stakeholders, we continued by defining the concept together with the city of Tallinn. And then the final phase was the actual final solution, which in our case was the tools, the plant library and the hub. And then we arranged for the tools usability testing, and then at the final stage was co-developing and finalizing these tools in co-development with the city. But of course, there is iteration in this kind of process, so you have to come back to the concept and then redefine the solution sometimes. So we started with stakeholder mapping, and we found out that there are numerous of stakeholder groups that are involved in our product. And there is, of course, then the need to map them, but also to prioritize which are the most important ones. And in this case, we selected the urban planners and landscape architects, both public and private sector planners, and also city gardeners. And then from the citizens, the active citizens, as the main user groups. And that definitely had an impact on those activities that we then selected. Before we go to the activities, we of course designed the user research so that we understood what we need to know and how we can get there. So we used this PACT model by David which comes from the user-centered design approach. So you have to consider the people who are the users, but also their activities. What are they trying to achieve with your tool or system or service? And then the context, where are they actually using it? It all has an impact on the user experience. And then also the technology, what is existing technology, what can be used? And considering the research questions, what we have to know, we can select the methods and see what kind of data we need and what kind of outcomes we need from this user research process in order to understand the user needs. And then after that, to formulate the requirements for the tools or the service. So what we did then to understand the user needs, as I mentioned, we organized online workshops, also on site, a couple, but mainly online in Zoom. And there we had some presentations about the concept idea. And then we organized their group discussions, and all that was then analyzed. And together with these sessions, we gathered information with questionnaires and also some interviews. And you may understand that this is very various data that we get, a lot of information to be processed. And what we did then was to collaboratively analyze this. So often it goes so that some user researcher or developer takes the data and analyzes it, but we actually focused on collaboration in the analysis phase. So we had identified, or we had all this data, and based on the data, we identified the user needs. What do the user need? And then we started to create user stories, which are more detailed kind of articulations. For example, as a planner, I want to see the 3D model or see user feedback in the 3D model to be able to understand what my citizens consider the plan to be like. And after that, when we have these user stories, we have the understanding of the needs, then we created more detailed and also technical user requirements. And these were then prioritized together in co-working sessions. And here you have, I have some examples of those activities that we did together with users. I think it's very important. It's a luxury to be able to test tools in the actual use context. We were in the Avalin Hub testing the co-planning application and also this VR application, and we were able to test it in group situations where people use it together, but also when they use these tools individually. And we also arranged usability tests in a more like laboratory setting in Aalto with Aalto students. Here you can see two sessions where we test the students were testing. We gave them tasks that they had to accomplish with the tool. So the user testing was task-based, and then we observed how they used these tools. So the observation was very important to understand what are the challenges when using the tool. And then we discussed with them how they see it, and also gathered, once again, detailed information with questionnaires. Yeah, and we get a lot of feedback considering the usability of the tool, and also how easy it is to, for example, to navigate this kind of 3D model. And now something happened. Maybe I use this.
Yes,
Yeah, but at the end, we understood about something about the usefulness of the tools. So we were able to understand that for our primary groups, urban planners, landscape architects, city gardeners, active citizens, how these different tools could support, how they be useful in community planning activities. For example, this co-planning application where people were able to make their own designs. It was so seen that it would be useful, or it is useful in the brainstorming phase of urban planning. And also this kind of fact-based assessment where you get actual data and analyze it together with the 3D model. And the Urban Temple, which was the VR application, it was useful in visualizing the urban change and communicating it with different stakeholders, and the hub for this kind of two-way communication together with the citizens. But of course, there were also challenges, and maybe Aija can tell us something about the learnings.
Yeah, always the critical voice. Yeah. These conclusions we have here, it's only related to the participation or user research part, because there was also a lot of activities outside this user activity. Yes, we had some concept already in our mind and experience also defined already in the solution idea. As I can see when listening to those pitches today, so there is already the idea, and it's important, of course, to have the idea. But then it is when we come to those user testing and user impact, it is challenging in a way to how do you consider all that input, what you get from these participants during quite an intensive and short period of piloting things. So this kind of balancing between the user needs and the research agenda, what you have written there, and all this. So in a way, it is all the time some kind of balancing between those different aspects. And also we had some challenge there that when we wrote the research agenda, we didn't actually pay enough attention on this user research and how much it takes our time. And that also was some kind of challenge during the whole process, because it's somehow emerged the importance of that user research during the process. So that's why, in a way, it took quite a lot of researchers' time as well. So when you now are preparing your piloting process, and if you are interested of engaging users seriously to the process, so take that time and think where it really is valuable and what do you expect out of it. So this kind of these considerations are important at this moment of your project. And then there is, of course, this city, the collaborative activities, which we have been, we must say that the role of the city of Tallinn has been very important for us. It was so that our project was working in teams for the plant library and for the several tools and for user research and this kind of teams. And in each team, we have the member also from the city of Tallinn. So they are really putting their time not only to this user research and participation issues, but also to developing the data set of the plant library and all these technical issues and whatever under the hub development. So the intensive co-working between Taltech and Aalto researchers, but also with the representatives of the city were very important. And we can see here in those what Pilvi was presenting here, the co-designing the user research and implementing the activities there, the city collaboration was important. And also analyzing the results of this, all these requirements, prioritizing them because the resources are always limited. So you have to make choices. And where do you have resources, which characteristics or functionalities you pay attention more and put your efforts. So that's important to prioritize. And then also co-writing articles, what we are as researchers expected to do. There we also had collaboration with the city. And then one issue, very, very simple, but very important issue is the language issue. When we talk about involving and engaging local people, if they are in Dublin, if they are in Tallinn, if they are in Helsinki, the local language is needed. And that also takes resources. If you want to take some comparative studies between Helsinki and Tallinn, so you have to collect the material in a local language, and then you have transcript it and translate it and all this. That also takes resources. So this is what we experienced in our project. Each project is, of course, unique in a way, but there are some similarities. We have decades of experience of this participation and user research. So this is, I think, many of those points can be seen also here in this Green Twins.
We have time for questions.
Yeah, it's time for questions and comments. If you want to know something more. Kalle.
Dealing with well, I'm thinking the pitches and the sort of services or products to be sold to cities might be good to think, as you slightly indicated in your presentation, where I got the idea that cities, what city needs, it's not a simple thing. It's a sort of double-sided, at least. So the city authorities or people working in cities, they have their own habits and processes and their own interests to make their life easier or sustainable, versus citizens who may have totally different interests and sort of how to integrate that, how to recognize that, and how to integrate that to the product or service or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we have actually two major kind of layer to collaborate with the city representatives and then the citizens. And I don't know if I mentioned, but when we talk about this co-working here, we mean that we actually work closely together with the representatives of the city of Tallinn. And then citizen users were engaged with this user-centered approach. So we need different kind of ways to work with both. So do you, Aija, have something to add?
No, when we are working with the city planning, urban planning processes, they are quite long processes. They have their own limitations, and in a way, they are maybe not the most interested in people's minds when they are invited to these kind of different kind of events. And so it is city planning. It's very different if we think about, for example, those water projects which were presented in the morning, or then we think about the very holistic and complex urban, maybe master planning level urban futures projects. So there are very different those projects, and then of course the motivations of people and participants to join the team. So it varies quite a lot. I don't know if I answered to the question, but it is in a way you have to really carefully in a way to consider the character of the project, and then in a way modify the different roles of participants to that.
Yeah, I maybe wanted to add about this. We always think that we want to engage citizens and get something from them to use our app, or I don't know, answer the questionnaire, come to the workshop and so forth. We have to really keep in mind that they have to get something in return, and quite quickly. Otherwise, this is the only time they answer your question or come to the workshop. So really design and think how they get the understanding that their feedback was useful, it's used somehow, and they get, I don't know, better life in the city in one or other way. Yeah. But you really don't forget that, okay, good, they answered that, yeah, I got my tick and that's done, but yeah, let's keep them informed.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. That was one of the first questions in the first slide, because that people must know why they are asked to do that. Yeah, Pilvi has something in your mind.
Yeah, there is actually a comment and question in the chat about implementation barriers. So Cyprian is asking, have you encountered any implementation challenges and how did you deal with them? That's a good question and maybe the topic for another other presentation, but I think this process was full of implementation barriers, and that was the reason why we had this user research approach. So, for example, starting from the use of these tools in Tallinn city planning department and implementing the hub and what kind of hub should be there and how they are going to use it, how are they use it. So there was a lot of discussion and maybe a separate process actually going on in the city of Tallinn where they kind of discussed and considered the use of these novel tools, because it always is a question of the practices also, how you need to change the practices if you take a new tool.
Yeah, that's so often. I mean, the whole question of implementing technology to your daily work. We have a lot of course, research on that and knowledge, but it can't be too much emphasized in a way, the challenge of how do the planner really take your tool to its daily practice, the routine, which we are the planning process. Of course, we also have something in my mind, this transformative, the changing the world better, but it has to happen so that it really finds in a way the users, whoever they are, so that they are motivated to change their work flow, the process and all that. Yeah, please.
So now your project has ended.
Yeah.
And so how much you see that your tools are still in use? So is it like phased off with the end of the project, or is it used increasingly?
That's people from our team are continuing also in the center of developing in a way further those tools. But I think the most concrete process is ongoing now with the hub, which is the Avalin hub, and how the planners and maybe also politicians, decision makers, how they get motivated to, in a way, to integrate the use of the hub, and what kind of creative mind do they have in a way, how can they utilize the hub in their decision making, their meetings, or some event which is in some planning process. So it will be seen, but it's an ongoing process now we have there.